everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to have a little fun. Keep your eye out for these 3 little fairies throughout this video, and you could win a fabulous DIY class over at my ReThink Fabulous Facebook page. Here's how it works. 1. There'll be 3 fairies that you need to find throughout this video. 2. Once you found them, remember where you found them. Number 3, at the end of this video is an email address for you to send your answers to. And on March 1st, we will pick 1 lucky winner to receive a free class from ReThink Fabulous on Facebook. Good luck! To start off this project, I'm going to be using 1 piece of foam board from the Dollar Tree. I'm just going to be measuring 9 inches, and then I will put a little slit in the foam board on both sides. Once I get my first piece cut, I'm just measuring here to make sure that my second piece of foam board is the exact same size. Now I'm going to be cutting my foam board from the corner in just a little bit, about 2.5 inches, just to give my board a little bit of an angle. Now I'm going to lay the first piece of foam board on top of the second one and just trace it with my knife so that the angles are exactly the same. And then I'm going to flip the board over and do the other end the same. Now that I've got both pieces cut exactly the same size, I'm going to put them together and just trim off any excess pieces of foam that are sticking out. Here I just grabbed a piece of extra foam board that I had left over, and I'm just going to make a straight line with my cutting blade. Now I want to make sure that it's tall enough to fit my long pieces of foam board that we just cut out. The part that I'm cutting now will actually be the sides of my box, so I'm just measuring a straight line, and here I'm just making sure that it's long enough to match up with the front of my box. After putting a little slit in my foam board where I want it to be cut, I just take the other piece of foam board and I found another scrap piece of foam board, and I went to measure it, but it was just too small. So I'm actually going to have to glue 2 pieces together to get a big enough piece. So I just put the 2 ends together, and then I'm going to use some hot glue to run a bead down the seam and add a crafting stick. That way it'll keep it together. Now I'm just going to cut the bottom and we'll be all finished with those 2. I'll be using a Dollar Tree St. Patrick's Day sign, and I'm just taking off that metal clover and then cutting off the twine handle at the top. Now I'm just going to add a row of glue all the way across the bottom of my foam board, and then I'm going to stick my sign right into that glue, matching the edge of the sign and the edge of the foam board together so that it connects perfectly flush with each other. And I'm going to let that glue dry. Now I'm going to stand it up on the end and just make sure that it's nice and flush with the foam board below, and I'm going to use my glue gun to glue all the seams on the inside of my box. And now we'll move to the other end, and we're just going to do the exact same process on this end as we did the other end. And now we'll cut our final piece of foam board that's hanging off the edge. Once I finish getting everything glued together, I like to take my cutting blade and just trim off all the edges around the whole box so that it's nice and finished off. And then I'll use my blade kind of at an angle to round off those squared off edges. This just gives it a more finished and rounded off look, and it looks more like a wood box. And here is my box all glued together. Now I'll be using some of my Apple Barrel white matte paint, and I'm just going to dry brush that paint onto the foam board. So when you're painting to get a wood look, you want to keep your strokes going in one direction. So I'm just going back and forth here, painting my foam board. Now I'm going to start putting dings and nicks into my wood just to give it a more realistic look. Here I'm using my thumbnail. Now I'm going to be using the back of a fork. Here I'm just going to continue to paint the black foam board with my white paint. So when I'm using the white paint, I'm just using a dry brush method, which means I'm not adding any water. So as you can see here, the variations of the colors. So we've got the white paint with the black foam board coming through in different areas. Once we have the front and both sides done, we will do the back. So I'm going to do the exact same process on the back. You can also paint the inside of your box if you want. I didn't on this particular one because I'm going to be having a lot of greens in there and you won't be able to see inside. But if you were going to resell this or give it as a gift, you definitely would want to paint the inside as well. So now I'm just going to be using my hair dryer and dry that paint with high heat. Okay, remember those little indentions that we made with our fingernail and the fork? We're going to take some black paint and we are going to get that paint down in those little grooves really well so that when we go across it with our Waverly antiquing wax, it'll blend those black spots into the brown and give it a real nice weathered wood look. And those little knots that we put into our fake wood will show up and be more defined. As you can see here, I'm adding my Waverly antiquing wax on to the foam board across the white paint. Now I typically don't use water with my antiquing wax, but for this one I'm going to. So I'm getting some wax on and then I'm going to start dipping it into some water and kind of spreading it out a little bit. It's more like a stain at this point instead of a wax. You can see here once I add the water, it really thins out that wax and goes more on like a stain. Now I'm still using the same paintbrush as I did when I put my white paint on for this wax, and I'm just going to keep blending and blending and adding some more black into the little knots, and see how I go right over the top of that black and it just blends it really nicely. So you're just going to continue to do that across your whole project until you get the wood color that you like. So you want different variations of color in your fake wood, some darker areas and some lighter areas. And here I'm just dipping my brush, just the tips of it, into some black paint and starting to add some of that darker color to my wood. For this project, the secret really is to blend those colors. You're really wanting to blend that white in with the brown antiquing wax and then that black into the brown. And so the more you blend, the better it's going to look. Here I'm just adding some more of the brown antiquing wax to the whole project just to finish it off. This is a project that you can just keep working with until you really like the colors that you get. Don't get frustrated with it. It really is a process. So the more you add and the more you blend, the better it seems to look. Now that I'm done painting and waxing my box, I'm going to kind of dry it with my hair dryer. And I'll be using the cold shot on my hair dryer to dry up that wax. If you use the high heat, it will kind of melt your wax and it will not dry properly. At this point, your box is done, so you can either stencil something on the front or leave it plain. And here's some pictures of the finished project. Thanks for watching. Were you able to find the 3 fairies hidden in the video? If so, make sure you email your answer to Natalie at rethinkfabulous.com for a chance to win a free DIY class. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any fabulous DIYs.